Welcome to the Slow Living Collective podcast. I'm Amy, wife, mother of two and devoted homemaker. Join me on this journey as we explore the beauty of slow and simple living, where life unfolds at its own unhurried pace. I'll take you through my experiences of slowing down, tending to our allotment plot, finding joy in the little things and making the most of our small home. Together we'll learn to live in harmony with the ever-changing seasons, discovering the magic that lies in embracing the present moment. So let's embark on this enriching adventure towards a more intentional and fulfilling life. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Slow Living Collective podcast. I'm Amy and I'm so excited to have you here with me today. Whether you are brand new or you are returning, welcome back. I'm so excited, like I said, to have you here on the podcast with me today. Particularly so because we're about to dive into something that I feel like might be a little bit of a contradiction, especially in today's world. And that is how to embrace slowness in a world that is moving faster than ever. Yeah. Okay, so you heard me right, slowness, right, in a world that's constantly on the go. So I think probably by now you know me, unless you're new here, of course, but, you know, I often talk about slow living, slowing down, embracing a bit more of a simple life, and so often people are like, but Amy, I have X, Y, and Z to do, I'm busy, I have a full-time job, I'm, raising my children, life is really busy for us. How the hell am I going to do that? How can I do it? It's not possible, can't do it. And that's something that really does come up really often for me when I'm sharing about slow living on Instagram, slow living on Substack, here on the podcast. How is it possible to slow down? Or people that actually inherently believe like slow living sounds great, but I'm too busy for that. It's not for me. And I think one of my goals, one of my sort of emerging goals actually really is to show that actually for most of us, we have incredibly busy lives. For most of us, we are raising children, or we are, we have a busy family life in some way. We have a job, we have, a job outside the home or inside the home, or, we might be a stay-at-home parent and our job is, solely being with the children, or, there are so many different options, so many different things. For me, I always think my role is really varied. My unpaid work, if you will, is being the stay-at-home parent, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. And that is when my husband, he is working. We are very lucky. He does work from home, but that doesn't mean that he can take time off or anything like that. Like, he works a very full day and he has a lot to do. It doesn't really make a difference whether he's here or not, other than the commuting time, I would say. And so that, I would say, is, primarily what I'm doing Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. That is very busy. We home educate, so I am largely here, there and everywhere. We are learning, we are doing stuff, and yeah, that is on me. That is completely on me to facilitate my children's education. Aside from that, I run my own business and I have to do that outside of that Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. I have to do it when I have childcare, or which is very, very rare. Or other than that, it is, when I am, at the complete opposite schedule to my husband. So, if he finishes work at 5 o'clock, that might give me some time to do stuff. But, we actually are a family first and foremost. So it's about finding space. It really is. And it's not easy. Our life is very full, very busy. There is lots to do. And it's just, I kind of want to, it's a bit cliche, but I want to be like, I have a very busy life. You have a very busy life. We can find a way to embrace slowness in this very busy world. So, the world is busy, and that is not going to change. hustle is everywhere. We are just surrounded by this constant pressure to either do more or be more and just keep moving at what feels like 100 miles an hour all the time. And it's almost like we are just on this never-ending treadmill where we're expected to keep running, even when our bodies and minds are just like begging us for a break. You know, we've got jobs, we've got parenting, we've got care responsibilities, emails, deadlines, social media feeds that we want to keep up with, never-ending to-do lists. We have, you know, we might have a PAYE job, we might run our own business. But, you know, what if all of that busyness is not the key to a happy life? What if the key to happiness actually lies in slowing down? And I know some of you might be thinking like, slowing down, but that's not very productive. Does that mean that I'm not being very productive? And I know where that comes from. This is, you know, this theory that our worth is tied to our productivity. And if we're not being quote unquote productive, then what are we really doing? What is going on? And, you know, slowing down, it makes it sound like, first and foremost, like we're doing everything at a slow pace. And, you know, it sounds very idyllic, doesn't it? Like, you know, I'll have a slow morning where I will get up and I will, you know, I'll get myself ready, and then, you know, I will make everybody breakfast. I will take some time. Maybe I will journal a little bit. Maybe I'll do some reading. This is not my world. And, you know, maybe it's a world for some people, and that's completely fine. You know, if you actually identify with that, maybe life looks a little different for you. I know for me, I have 2 children. My getting up is not slow, really. And, you know, that's not going to be part of my life. There's not going to be anything particularly idyllically slow about my morning. However, that being said, I would say I have a slow morning, but that is because I weave slowness into it. And I think we need to come away from this idea that slow literally means pace, and not about weaving, you know, intentional parts into our days, intentional parts into our morning, intentional parts into our routines or our rhythms. You know, I often say, you know, we have these non-negotiables, and I think so often people focus on like, well, you know, I've got to get up, I've got to get the kids up, we've got a school run to do, I've got to get everybody, you know, to breakfast clubs or to school on time, and then I've got to go to work, and then, you know, I'm picking them up from an after school club, and then I'm running to them to like extracurricular activities, then we've got to have dinner, then it's bath time and it's bed, and it's so exhausting. And it is busy, and these things are non-negotiables, and we are not going to change them, you know, unless you're going to make a drastic lifestyle change. I would say there are elements of that I don't have to participate in because I home educate, but that doesn't mean I'm not tearing my hair out running around to extracurricular activities and home ed classes. I wouldn't say that it always necessarily indicates that it's slower, but I think it does help some. But then, you know, that being said, it's not everybody's choice. I'm just, you know, being honest with how my life runs. And, you know, it is about these non-negotiables. They are not going to change. So we need to work with them, and we need to find space around the non-negotiables where we can weave in slowness. And it's one of these things that just takes time, and it's one step at a time, one foot in front of the other. But, you know, when we start to think about where we can add slow living, slowness, simplicity, being more intentional into our lives, it doesn't mean that we are not being productive. It doesn't mean that we're doing less or we're giving up on certain things, letting your dreams that you have fall to the wayside. It doesn't mean any of that. It means finding a balance, a way to do things with a little more intention, to maybe in those spare moments or spare time find things that bring you joy. So, you know, I find for me personally, gardening is super therapeutic. I love gardening. I've done it for many years. You know, if you've been around here for a while, you know that I was a passionate balcony gardener. Then I got my allotment, and, you know, for me, that is a really intentional part of my life, and it springs out of so much stuff. It encourages me to slow down. Like you can't garden fast. You just can't. It's impossible. I'm planting a seed in March. Like, I'm not eating that till September? It takes time, and the whole process is about being really intentional, but it unplugs you from the busyness of life. It helps you find more of a balance. And I'm not suggesting you will run out and become gardeners, of course, but that is just something that I find as a very intentional part of my life. And it springboards off of so much that I enjoy. I enjoy slowing down. I enjoy the simplicity. I enjoy, ebbing and flowing with the seasons. I enjoy being able to grow my own food. I am really passionate about eating seasonally, eating organically, eating well. Like, all of these things feed into, I think, just being more intentional. And I think sometimes slow living can sort of just get confused. I think really we shouldn't have called it slow living. We should have just gone and said intentional living, being more intentional. Find ways to do things with more intention and make space for what truly matters. So if you're sitting there thinking, but I have to be busy to be successful, or if I slow down, everything is going to fall apart. I get it. It is a completely natural thought, promise you. But what I really want you to hear today is that slowness actually creates the space for better productivity. And it's the kind of productivity that isn't rushed or frantic or draining, or, as I often describe, like, I feel like I'm flying by the seat of my pants kind of productivity, right? It's the kind where you're doing things because they feel right, not because you're trying to keep up with the world. And the lie that the world has sold us, that our worth is based on our productivity. And, it's kind of the same thing as, like, we're defined by the work we do. If there was two of us and somebody said, oh, what's your job? And the first person said, oh, I actually work at a multinational bank in finance. They would go, oh, that's fantastic. And then they say, oh, what do you do? And I say, oh, I'm a stay-at-home parent. They're like, oh, that's nice. And then that's the end of it. And, it's this idea that our worth is tied to what we do rather than who we are. And we've got to kind of break down those barriers. And I think slow living is a massive trend now, let's be honest. But I actually think that all it is just going backwards in a good way. It is going back to the kind of life that maybe our grandparents lived. And, sometimes I think that, our grandparents' generation, my grandparents' generation, like they really struggled. They really, really struggled for what they had. And so I don't mean to glamorize that. I mean it in the way that, there was a lot more slowness and intention, and a lot more, home cooked meals. But the world looked very different. On the whole, women didn't work, and that makes a huge difference. Now, most places, most houses, most families, they need two incomes to even think about surviving. And so and a lot of people want to return to work. Me being one of those people, right? I don't want to return to work outside the home. I want to work for myself, but then I worked for myself before I had children as well. So that is not completely, I'm not completely doing anything different than I did before. And so when I, refer to, the past and how a lot of what slow living brings is almost like a step backwards. I think it's a step backwards in reevaluating like where we've come. It's not saying like, okay, us as women, we should all give up work and go home and spend our day making casseroles and tending to our 23 children, right? It's not about that. It is about having the option, but secondly, it is just finding those moments where the things that appeal to you, like, so for me, it is creating nourishing, organic, home cooked meals for my family. How do I do that in the busy life I lead, for example. And so, going back to productivity, it's kind of about where you're doing things because they feel right, not because you're trying to keep up. So when we slow down, we really allow ourselves to check in with our needs, to reassess what our priorities are, and just to make sure that we're moving in the direction that is right for us. And I think slowing down, it's more about making decisions from a place of intention and not out of urgency. And I think most of you will understand. I mean, sometimes when I have, in running my own business, I often feel this urgency and I have to really, really rein it back. And it's about like how you can tap into that. And, when everything starts to feel a little lighter and a little easier, you feel a lot more aligned with who you are and what you really want. So my mission for this episode is so simple. I just want to help you realize that slowing down isn't just possible. It is actually the easiest thing you'll ever do once you understand how to align with yourself and with the seasons. Because, I talk about the seasons a lot when it comes to slow and simple living. And slowness isn't just this abstract, far off idea that requires, tons of willpower and effort. It is as natural as breathing. It is like, walking into a room and letting the sun just shine on your face. It is about syncing up with that rhythm of the world around you and letting go of the idea that you have to keep up with the chaos. And that's why I talk about the seasons so much, because I believe that the seasons, the seasons around us and nature, it is inherently part of slow living. When we align with nature's flow of the seasons, we make slowness feel like the most natural thing in the world. And when you do that, you'll be able to slow down easily without stress and without feeling like you're falling behind. So you might be surprised just how easy slowing down can be when you start listening to the rhythm of the seasons. So let's go. Let's go. Let's dive into it. Right, let's dive into this little paradox. Why are we all rushing around like our hair's on fire? Why are we doing it? Why are we constantly checking to-do lists, and why are we always fighting against the clock? It's like we're all in this giant race and nobody seems to know where the finish line is. Have you ever stopped and wondered why we are all in such a hurry all the time? Because I have. And let me tell you this, it is absolutely cultural conditioning. We have been taught from day one that busyness equals success. And it's like this weird badge of honour that we all wear, where the more we juggle, the more important we seem. Now, think about it this way. When someone asks how you're doing, your first instinct is either to say, I'm doing okay, right? Sometimes we say, I'm okay, even, if the worst thing in the world has just happened. Okay, I'm fine. Or we say, I'm so busy. And it's like some kind of accomplishment. I mean, let's be honest, who isn't busy, right? Who isn't busy? But this busyness is not making us feel more successful. It's making us feel exhausted. So society has glorified hustle culture, and it's, where success is defined by how much we are able to do, how much we can accomplish things, how many tasks we can cross off our never-ending to-do list. And it's this cycle where we're always in go, go, go mode. And the second you slow down, someone, somewhere is there to remind you that you actually should be doing more. And it's like we've been conditioned to think that the more productive we are, the more worthy we are. In fact, that's exactly what it is. But I want to know when it became so normal to be busy that we're all stressed, overworked, and on the brink of burnout. And, I refer often to my time in an MLM because that was hustle culture just on steroids. And, we've all heard, if you're not hustling, you're not trying hard enough. Some people, they use their busyness and their overbooked schedules and the craziness that their life has become as a badge of honor as well. And that's not success. It's just exhaustion disguised as productivity. But we've been trained to think that busyness is a reflection of how important we are, and that the more we do, the more we believe we matter. But when we stop and really actually look at it, we start to see that all of this busyness is just a kind of like a smoke screen. It's a way of keeping us distracted from what really matters, like our health, our friendships, our relationships, our happiness. And the consequences of this mindset of busyness are so heavy because we end up being stressed out, burnt out, mental health starts to struggle, and we're just constantly caught up in this cycle of doing, and we disconnect from all the deeper stuff. And we forget to check in with ourselves and just ask, like, is what I'm doing actually bringing me any joy? Is this aligned with my values or the way I wish to live my life? And instead we're caught up being busy. We feel like we're running on this treadmill and we're just too tired to get off. Now, I was the same. I was absolutely the same. I was running at full speed, checking off all the things. I often, like I said, refer to the time I was in an MLM, and, it just started to feel a bit empty, and, I didn't feel fulfilled. I felt drained. I remember asking, one of the leaders in my MLM, like, how do you get it all done when you just have a newborn? And she told me to basically hand my newborn off to something else and work harder. And I was like, what am I doing this for? This is not what I want my life to look like. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And, multi-level marketing is absolutely, as far as I'm concerned, in my opinion, a cult. But, and there's been a lot of unpicking and unpacking of that over the years since I left. And, I find it fascinating now. People who are still in multi-level marketing don't find my words that fascinating. They get very angry with me. But, I probably would have been the same. But I just started focus on, how I was going to slow down. And I truly believe that the pipeline from MLM to slow down is a popular one. And it was when I left the MLM and I started to watch a little bit of anti-MLM content on YouTube, when first and foremost I was like, holy moly, what was that? And like I said, a lot of unpacking of what I went through. And, I just made the decision to slow down. I didn't have it all figured out then, but I knew I needed to change the pace of where I'd been. And I started to feel like this huge weight was lifted off my shoulders. And like I said, it wasn't easy. Changing a mindset that's been ingrained in you for absolutely years does not happen overnight. But little by little, I was able to start leaning into the slowness. And, I found that it was not only possible to live with less rush, but I actually enjoyed it so much more, because busyness doesn't serve any of us, and it just keeps us distracted from the things that really matter. And so once I realised that, things started to shift in ways I did never expected, and I'll go into that a little more later. But I want to take a little step back and think about how conditioned we've been to think about busyness, and how could we start to reframe that idea? Could we stop measuring our worth by how much we're doing and start measuring it by how well we show up for the things that matter most? It's a game changer, I promise you. And, we spend so much time rushing around like our lives depend on it. So why don't we flip the script on that? Let's think about how we can be more intentional. And I know you're probably thinking, if I slow down, doesn't that mean that I'm going to do less? And doesn't that mean I've got to give up on something? Am I losing out on opportunities? I have to run at this speed. And I'm here to tell you that no, you don't. Because slowness isn't actually about doing less. It's just making space for what truly matters. So, for example, if you're thinking like, well, one of my non-negotiables is absolutely going to my job, and I love my job. It is something I really enjoy, and I actually am enjoying, climbing the ladder in my job. I can't afford to take my foot off the gas, because does that not mean that I am giving up on that goal or losing out on opportunities? And, if that's something important to you, then that's the thing we're going to be prioritizing, right? Because it's about creating a life that feels intentional, fulfilling, and aligned with your values. And I get that it can sometimes feel like, well, those two things, they don't necessarily mesh that well together. But it, like I said, it's not about doing less, it's about doing the things that matter, and potentially finding the things in your life that you do that maybe don't matter so much. Let's break it down a little more. Slow living is this mindful, intentional approach to life. It is not about running from one task to the next or filling every moment of our days with to-dos. It is about slowing down enough to savour the moments that matter. So that might be, so for me, I really enjoy a cup of coffee in the morning. It is possibly the most favourite part of my morning, just to enjoy my coffee without thinking about my to-do list or what I'm going to do. I stand out on my balcony for a couple of minutes. I listen to the birds chirping. The kids might be running in and out. Maybe not so much. It's winter when I'm recording this. Not so much at the moment. Mostly they're like, can you shut the door? And so it is, it is about just taking a few moments and noticing the beauty of the little things that sometimes tend to get lost in the rush. And it's things like quality over quantity. Instead of trying to do more, it's about focusing on doing what matters and doing it well and doing it with presence. And when you start to live this way, life actually feels richer, because it's not about cramming everything in. It's just about making sure you do the things that you want and choose to fill your time with things that bring you true joy and satisfaction. So, slowness, slow living, intentional living. There are some massive benefits to living a slower, more intentional life. And I want to walk through them with you, because trust me, when you start to think about how you might embrace slowness, it is like stepping into a new world, I promise you. So, first and foremost, presence and connection to yourself. So, we get so lost in the busyness that sometimes I think we just disconnect from who we are, and sometimes from the people around us as well. And so I'm not talking about just like physical presence. I mean actually being there. Like when you slow down and are present, you can show up more fully for yourself, for your loved ones. And think about it. How often are we half listening, half present, rushing from one thing to the next? Instead, when you take time to slow down, you can really be where you are and connect with yourself on a deeper level. Like, how does your body feel? How does your mind feel? Maybe it's time with your family, friends, in nature, and then slowly but surely you start to appreciate the beauty in these simple moments. And that might be, a couple of minutes on the balcony with a cup of coffee, or the stillness in the morning. All of it becomes more meaningful. And another thing is, it just improves your mental well-being, because when you slow down and you cut out the noise and you just focus on the things that matter to you, you get a bit of a mental reset, because our brains are constantly in overdrive, always processing, multitasking, running in circles. When we allow ourselves to slow down more, we can clear the clutter in our minds. And one by one, slowly but surely, once you start to slow down, things start to become clearer and your mental clarity starts to settle back in. You can think more clearly, you can make better decisions, you can actually feel your thoughts instead of feeling like you're in a fog all the time. And it just gives you the space to process your feelings and to check in with how you're really doing, instead of just pushing your emotions to the side, or I'll deal with that another time, I haven't got time right now. And so again, it comes back to those non-negotiables. Life is always going to be busy. It will always be busy for you, for me, for everyone. There is always busyness. There is always stuff going on. It is about finding the space around the busyness and around the non-negotiables. We have more time there than we think we do. And it's worth looking at where we waste our time, I think. Where we waste our time is going to look different for everyone. Lots of people will be like, I waste my time scrolling on Instagram. And I think we could probably all say that we potentially waste time there. But I don't know. Is decompressing after a busy day of work or parenting, is Is there anything wrong with that? Sometimes we just want to shut down and be like, I just need some moments to myself, and I would like to laugh at some reels, and I am quite happy with that decision. Thank you very much, society. Please don't judge me. And that's completely fine. It is completely fine. So another benefit of slowing down as well is it actually reduces our stress levels. We are less likely to burn out because we live life as if we're in fast forward. And when you're no longer running yourself into the ground, you just have a bit of space where you can sort of rest and recharge and reset, and that feels so much better. It allows you to prioritize your health, your well-being, and you just, I don't know, everything just starts to feel a little easier. It's like when you make room for slowness, your energy feels a little more replenished and you're less likely to burn out. I truly believe that if you can embrace slow living and living in tune with the seasons, allowing those ebbs and flows that naturally exist in the world around us, then we are more likely to avoid burnout and we can live with a little more ease and a little more joy. And I think the most important thing is to really sort of think about how slow living doesn't mean doing less. It's just about making space for what truly matters, and that looks different to everyone. And it is about, again, seeing where those non-negotiables are and, figuring out the space around those. The non-negotiables are unlikely to change. So it is about figuring out how that works for everyone. And, that it's important, particularly for me, I think, that, while I am embracing slowness, I want to make sure that my children are embracing slowness as well. And I hope that by raising them in the way that I do, where we have slow, simple and seasonal living as almost the focal point to our lives, is that when they grow up, they're not going to be sitting here in their 30s unpacking hustle culture. I hope that by doing the work now, it will make like a lasting change. And, I'm very careful to find the balance between things they enjoy doing outside the home, maybe extracurricular activities, home ed classes, without packing their schedules. We are not a schedule kind of family anymore. We are not an out every day kind of family. I naturally build rest into our week. We definitely have potentially 2 full days or 2 full weekdays at home in our home ed schedule where we won't do classes. Now, one of those days we do have like an extracurricular in the early evening, which is fine. I can't pick. But it's really important to me as a home educator and a mother that I have the time and space to rest as well, and that they are not sitting in an overpacked schedule either, where they just don't have time for free play. Free play is the absolute goal in our world. I have a child that is 5 and a child that is 3, and absolutely the freedom to just be is important. No overscheduling. We're not out all the time. No, it's not for me. That, although I can provide them, I would say, a less busy life because, they've not got school bells to adhere to and things like that, there's absolutely the same opportunity to overpack a schedule. And I don't want that for them. We even know that having to hurry children can cause anxiety. We know that. So I'm hoping that, like I said, doing the work now will make that better for them in the future. So that's just my thoughts on weaving slowness in. But I've mentioned quite a bit about seasonal living, and I really think so. When I created my seasonal living course, a few people said to me like, "Oh, I thought you were just going to go with like I thought the first thing you would offer would be like a slow living course." I mean, my seasonal living course, Rooted in Seasons, it is going to be out in March, so it is coming soon. So I had Rooted in Seasons out in the world already. You might be like, I've already heard of Rooted in Seasons. What are you talking about? It's coming out soon. I had Rooted in Seasons out. I released it. I had my founding members. They joined. They took the course. They gave me feedback. I had some other ideas on expanding the course as well. And together, I was able to create a even bigger, better, more transformative course than I originally had. And that was the goal of it. That's why I did like a founding member part to it. And so it was the goal was always to have seasonal living at the heart of it, and that's why I called it Rooted in Seasons, because I think everything is rooted in seasons. So the seasonal fluctuations in the year, the ebbs and flows, they are natural, and they are absolutely the be all and end all when it comes to slow and simple living. Seasonal living is at the crux of it, and it is the absolute game changer when it comes to slowing down. So Rooted in Seasons is actually now this complete full transformation course which incorporates seasonal, slow and simple living. And so it is all of those things, but the seasonal aspect of it, once you get to grips with living in alignment with the seasons, you're there. You are there, and you can, weave the rest in. Because, like I said, it is the game changer when it comes to slowing down and finding your natural rhythm. So before you think, oh my God, she's gone hippie or something, like it's just for people who have tons of time again, hear me out. Aligning with the seasons is actually the easiest way to embrace slowness and make it feel like it's flowing instead of constantly fighting against it. So let's think about nature for a second. Nature, whether we're talking about the cycles of the moon, changing of the leaves, whatever, it has its own rhythm. The seasons all have a pace, and you can tap into that rhythm too. In fact, that's how we've naturally lived for centuries. Right, and it's only in more recent times that we've been pulled away from that. So when we align with the seasons, we stop forcing things and we can start flowing with life as it was always meant to be. So, instead of paddling against it, you go with it, and it's really effortless and it's natural and it's the way we were always destined to live. And when you align with the seasons, life becomes easier, and I mean so much easier. So it's not something you have to create or force. It's already happening. It's all around you. Whether you're ready for it or not, whether you realize it or not, you are already in some sort of alignment with the seasons. And you can notice that in some very simple things. In the summer, you have more energy. It's because you get more daylight. It's because the days are longer. Everything has more energy in the summer. Take a look outside when it's summer and see what the trees are doing and the plants are doing and the growing vegetables are doing. They are blossoming. They are growing. That is living seasonally. You are doing the same thing in the summer. You are at peak energy too. Look at yourself in the winter. You're more tired. You're more lethargic. Of course you are. So is nature. Nature is dormant in the winter for the most part. Do the trees have any leaves on them in the winter? Not many of them do. Why? Because they shed their leaves so they can go dormant and so they can be ready for their rebirth and regrowth in the spring. You are nature. You are nature. You are following along with nature. You feel tired in the winter because it is a natural time to lay dormant. We don't have the benefit of laying dormant, right? We can't call up work, in December and say, right, it's winter now, so I'll actually be hibernating for 3 months. I will see you in the spring when I will be at my absolute best. So I will see you then. It's not possible, right? But there are things that you can do to manage that. Maybe through the winter, maybe we socialise a little less. Right? Maybe we don't actually always feel like going out. Whereas in the summer, we might socialise a lot more. We have more energy. We get more daylight in the summer. In the winter, we don't get a lot of daylight. And so you're naturally already living with the seasons, but you're actually, the way the modern world works, it kind of makes us push against it. And so when I say it becomes easier, it becomes so much easier. You don't have to force it. And you're already living through the seasons. There's nothing to manufacture. There's no pressure to get it right. All you have to do is acknowledge and step into the rhythm that's already present in the world around you. And, I know sometimes it feels like we have to create our own flow. We're told to build routines, organise our days, create a structure around every little thing. But this is the thing with seasonal living. You don't have to force it. Like I said, the seasons are already happening, and all you have to do is tune into them, work out what they mean, and how does that apply to how we live. You're already doing it. You're likely just pushing against it. And unknowingly, of course, but maybe you don't realize that these natural energies in the seasons, in the weather, even in the moon, if you are someone who menstruates, along with your menstrual cycle, you're cycling constantly as well. It is happening all of the time. So, all you have to do is tune in, and then you will notice when you tune into the seasons that actually life feels a little less chaotic. And instead of struggling against the tide, you can actually move together with it. And it's effortless because you're not fighting against what's already in motion. So if you're trying to hustle through the winter, it is hard, okay? The non-negotiables, they still exist, of course. And I will keep saying that. You can't buck against the non-negotiables. But you can figure out how to factor them into living seasonally. So, you can't stop going to work. You can't stop going to work. But you can acknowledge that maybe through the winter, maybe you're more tired. Maybe you're pretty much at your peak. And maybe you're just going to have to just go with the flow. Maybe in the summer, when you finish work, you're like, right, I'm going out. Whereas in the winter, you might be like, pass me my slippers. I'm going to sit down for the rest of the evening. So it's already happening. It is already there. And it is just basically about embracing what's naturally available to you at each moment through the year and leaning into what's happening around you instead of trying to push for more or do more. Like I said, during winter, nature just invites us to slow down and rest. And the cold weather and the short days, they're not something to fight against. It's an opportunity to recharge and to rest. We don't have to make winter work for us. We just have to follow it. It is already doing it. We just got to tune into it. And the same exists with spring, summer and autumn as well. Each season offers something unique. And when you live seasonally, we almost stop creating like a friction between our lives and what we're trying to do and the natural world. So I'm just going to dive into it. I appreciate I'm keeping you for a really long time today, but I'm just going to dive into each of the seasons. Now, when this is being recorded, it is winter, so I'm going to start there. People listen to my podcast episode all year round, so I will dive into all the seasons, so you just get like a little overview of each. But, winter, it is this season that I think actually gets so overlooked in the world of, hustle and everything, because winter is about rest and replenishment, and it's the season where the world slows down, nature rests, animals hibernate, the days are shorter. But in our busy culture that we live in, we often feel guilty about resting, don't we? Like we have to constantly be doing something to justify our worth. But winter gives us permission to rest. And do you know what happens when we honour that? It feels really good. So we get to cozy up and stay indoors and focus on the things that matters and just rest. And it doesn't have to be anything big or daunting. It's as simple as just resting or saying no, setting a boundary. But when winter ends, we dive into spring. And spring, like I said earlier, it's this time for rebirth and renewal. Spring is when everything starts to bloom and grow. The air feels fresh, the days start to get longer, and we naturally start to feel more energized because in spring, nature tells us that it's time to start over. All we have to do is tune into it. And so that can be maybe starting a new project, learning something new, jumping and going into the garden again. But it doesn't force you to go big. It's just quiet growth. It happens under the surface. It's like, the spring bulbs that slowly emerge out of the earth. So, you don't plant a spring bulb in the autumn and then it starts, you don't wake up one day and boom, it's there. Slowly, they're peeking through the earth. They're getting a bit bigger. They look like they're going to flower. Then they're going to flower. It's that slow, quiet growth. And I often say that I feel like spring is the natural new year. It's where new year used to be. And, so if you feel inspiration in the spring, take that cue, follow nature. Then we move into summer. Summer is all about abundance and warmth and just, enjoying ourselves. We're out in the sunshine. You're just reaping the rewards of our hard work. Summer, it feels like a time of celebration, and summer, I find isn't about pushing yourself harder. It is just, although we're, at peak energy, it's just enjoying it. And then we come round to autumn. Autumn is my favourite season, the season of letting go. And nature shows us that very perfectly. As we move through autumn, we see the trees letting go of their leaves. And it is just this signal that, we know that the trees will let go of their leaves and then they will fall dormant through the winter, and in the spring they will blossom and their leaves will come again. And it's just this perfect analogy for, there has to be a period where we stop, we release everything, we let go. And it is just time to take stock of everything and what no longer serves us. And it is this beautiful visual for us all that when we let go or release something, if we've been through a hard period, we let go of that, we will bloom again. We will go through winter and we will come out the other side into spring and we will bloom again. Just like nature proves us. We just have to look outside. It's already showing us. We just have to step into alignment with it. So, I know I've waffled on and you're probably like, Amy, you're such a hippie over this. But, seasonal living supports like every ounce of who you are. And it allows you to really slow down without guilt because it's already a natural rhythm. It already exists. It already aligns with everything that you need, your energy levels, everything. Everything you are as a human is connected to nature. You are part of nature. All you have to do is step into alignment with it. Once you do it, you don't feel like you're out of sync anymore or that you're constantly pushing against the tide. You're simply existing as part of the natural flow of the world around you, and it is the easiest thing you'll ever do. So if living slowly and simply is something that you are desperate to tap into, start with the seasons. Start just aligning with nature. Look out of your window. What is nature doing right now? How do you feel right now? Start looking at how you exist naturally in the natural world, because you're part of nature too. And the problem with the modern world is that it tries to push us against that. And it's, like I said, it's the easiest, most natural thing you'll ever do. Once you start doing it, you're like, but of course this makes sense. But of course it does, because that's the way it's supposed to be. So instead of creating this pressure to be productive all the time, let's let the seasons guide us, right? Let's trust in the natural ebbs and flows of the seasons of life. Let's give ourselves permission to rest when it's needed, grow when it's time, celebrate, let go, all of these things. And I think you'll realize that when you align yourself with the seasons, you will find that slowing down and simplifying your life is just a natural part of the cycle. And that's certainly what I found. So there you have it. Aligning with the seasons doesn't have to be complicated. It is the absolute crux of slowing down, and it is really just about tapping into the natural rhythms of life and just following nature's guide, it will tell you when to slow down. You'll feel it. You already know it. You do already know it. You're already thinking like, yeah, that makes sense. You know, I do feel more tired during the winter, or yeah, I do feel that way in autumn. I definitely feel that way in spring. You already know it. You've just got to tap into it. I am not telling you something you don't know. I'm just planting the seed, for a good analogy. I'm planting the seed for you to go off, and it will bloom in its own time. So, you know, like I said, it's not complicated. It's the most natural thing you will ever do. And so I just really encourage you, I guess, to start thinking about these seasonal shifts and how you can bring yourself back into alignment with the seasons, because I think you'll be really surprised with how easy and freeing it feels to just let go and just be with the season that you're in. And so, you know, going back to this fast-paced world, going back to slow living and seasonal living and how it all integrates together, you know, a lot of it is around our mindset. Our mindset is, you know, it's the conditioning that we've grown up with. And, you know, we haven't done anything wrong. It's just unpicking that and figuring out how to reframe our perspective on things. So reframe our perspective around productivity. Society tells us that we should always be doing something. The more we do, the more valuable we are. But, you know, you need to stop and ask yourself, like, is it bringing me joy? Or is it just filling my time? And, you know, productivity isn't about doing more. Sometimes it's doing what matters. And that's what is the most important thing. So you can, if you change that mindset shift, it can help you focus on really what brings you joy and just let go of the things that are just there taking up space. And, you know, let the seasons guide you, because there are so many different types of energy that is unique to each season. And when you embrace that, like I was just waxing lyrical about, you know, you can acknowledge the fact that you don't and you shouldn't be working at full speed all year. And so when you allow yourself to match your pace with the energy of the season, you know, it's basically, you will start letting go of what no longer serves you naturally, and give yourself permission to rest, of course. But I just think that, you know, there are so many opportunities to embrace slowness in a fast-paced world, and it seems like this massively weird paradox. But I promise you that the two can coexist. And I think the crux of it, as I've been saying, is in allowing yourself first and foremost to ebb and flow with the seasons and take your energy from the seasons. You're already there. You already know it. It's already inherently built into you as a human being. You just need to tap back into it. And once you tap back into it, you'll realise that, oh, yeah, actually, this is the most natural thing I've ever done. And actually, naturally, slowness comes out of this. So all of those times that you were thinking, I don't have the time, I'm far too busy, there's absolutely no way on God's green earth do I have time to slow down. What is Amy talking about? She must have an easy life. So it's not true. It's not true. You just got to tap into the natural ebb and flow of the seasons. And once you do that, you're well on your way. I promise you. So really, the key is to just make these small sustainable changes. And, you know, that can look like so many different things. And I hope this episode has been really helpful for you. I just want to remind you to start small. Just look out your window. What's the season doing? How can you match its energy? Look at nature. Nature will guide you. You don't have to be an outdoorsy person, right? You can just look through the window if that's all you want to do. But just start really small. Be patient with yourself. And just know that every single thing that you are doing, even listening to this episode, right, is a step towards a slower, more intentional life. And it's a step in the right direction. So I want to say thank you for hanging out with me today. I hope this episode gave you some fresh inspiration to start slowing down and living a little bit more in tune with the seasons. I know we've covered a lot of ground today over what slowness is important, how you need to be aligning with the seasons, how you can incorporate slow living. But there's one piece of advice I want to dive into just before I go. And it's how you can just embrace slowness in this fast-paced world where we started, when the pressure to stay busy is constantly looming. So it is basically that reframe the idea of busy, redefine it to match your priorities. Stop wearing busy like a badge of honor. Deal with external pressures. This is tricky, I know. There's work deadlines, family commitments, social obligations. That can make it feel impossible. But you have the power to navigate those pressures without losing yourself in the process. And so it's not about removing the non-negotiables or your responsibilities, because that's not possible, right? But it is about how we respond to them. So here's a tip for you. Prioritize what is truly important and let go of the rest. When you're overwhelmed by all these external pressures, ask yourself, is this task or commitment moving me towards my values, or is it just adding to the noise? And if it's the latter, it's okay to say no. It is okay to say no, because your time and energy are really precious. And that leads nicely on to say no without any guilt, because sometimes we don't want to say no. We're scared of saying no. We feel guilty for saying no. We don't want to let people down. You don't have to explain yourself. Just a simple, I am unable to take that on right now, but thank you for thinking of me. And guess what? It is okay to say no, even if you don't have a good enough reason. Your needs are good reason enough. They really are. So finally, let's talk about the discomfort of it all. It's one thing to talk about slowing down, but actually doing it is sometimes where it gets a little uncomfortable, because our brains are wired for productivity and constant motion. And we've been conditioned to think that rest is lazy and that productivity is tied to our worth. Now, I'm going to do an episode about laziness really soon, so keep an eye out for that. That as you start to prioritize slowness, your body and mind will begin to adjust, and you'll begin to crave that space instead of fighting against it. So it's a bit like building muscle memory. The more you practice, the easier it becomes. Listen, guys, at the end of the day, embracing slowness in a fast-paced world is just about choosing your own pace, and it looks different for all of us. Aligning with the values that you set for yourself, set boundaries to protect your time and energy. It's not always easy. There are so many external pressures that are constantly telling us to go, go, go. Honestly, it's hard, and we have a lot of non-negotiables in our lives. But when you start creating intentional space around that for what matters, you will start to feel the shift and realize that slowing down, it's not about doing less, but just about creating more room for the things that make you feel more alive, I guess. And that's the most important thing. So thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope this episode gave you permission to slow down and embrace the slowness and start making some more intentional choices in your own life. If you would like to join me in my Slow and Simple workshop, it's a 3-step framework to helping you slow down. I have that live on my website right now, so you can go and check that out. You can find that at theslowlivingcollective.com/slow workshop. That's theslowlivingcollective.com/slow workshop. You can also download my free guide, The Busy Person's Guide to Slowing Down. That is just this PDF guide. It's going to help you slow down, simplify, live more in tune with the seasons, completely free. You can find that theslowlivingcollective.com/busy guide. That's slowlivingcollective.com/busy guide. And these things, they're all designed with you in mind to help you slow down, simplify, live more in alignment with the seasons, and just start living that life that you feel pulled towards, because I don't think you'd be here if you didn't feel pulled towards it. Anyway, you can also check me out over on Substack. Don't forget, I'm there at theslowlivingcollective.substack.com. Please come follow me over on Instagram. I love to see everybody's life as they navigate slow, simple and seasonal living as well. You can find me there at The Slow Living Collective. So I hope this episode, like I said, gave you permission to slow down. I hope you start to think about ways that you can live in alignment with the seasons. I'll see you next time right here, and until then, I will catch you in the next episode.